All right, guys, what's going on? Wherever you are in the world, I say hello. It is Monday, June 17th here in Sydney, Australia, and we are waking up in a cold winter's morning. And now it's the next day after a huge weekend of boxing. I know it's Father's Day in America, so happy Father's Day to you guys. All right. We posted 2 new videos on our channel. The first one was a statistical breakdown of the Liam Perro and Subriel Matias fight. Talked about the punches, but more importantly, focused on some of the things that the media isn't talking about. More or less the odds going into the fight. Perro, the odds makers in Vegas. I know a lot of Perro fans felt disrespected with the 7-1 initial odds in Vegas, but then were excited after they put a bunch of money on him and then won. I know a couple guys who did that. Also, talking about the point deduction. If you watched the Perro Matias fight, you would have seen the referee in the 7th round. He was doing, I think his last name's Pabon, Luis Pabon. He was doing a job on Liam. He was making Liam's job, making his time in there not as smooth as it should have been. A referee is supposed to be in the fight to guide a fight and make sure nothing happens. The fight is not supposed to be about a referee, and it's always frustrating when you get an instance like Pabon interfering with Liam's momentum. We understand how important in the sport of boxing, getting into a groove, getting into a flow, especially if you're a technician like Perro, the last thing you need is the referee deducting a point. It was criminal. There was a clinch. You know what? Let me find a video. I posted it on our group, Boxing News Today. Did I post it on our group? I'll find it though. Let's hear a word from Eddie Hearn though. Here's Matchroom's guy. Matt, this is the guy who brought in Subriel to be the boogeyman for Matchroom.
It wasn't even close. It was a masterclass from Liam Perro. And to come to Puerto Rico, to the backyard of the guy that nobody wanted to fight, that is a massive win for Liam Perro, a massive win for Australian boxing.
Right on. Right on. Let's find the I'm going to try to find you the point deduction. It was horrible. Here we go. Watch it. Watch this. Luis Pabon.
That warrants a point deduction. Luis Pabon has had it out.
All it was, let's see if we can watch it again. Try to find it. It's right there. Right there. He deducted a point in the 7th round for that. Unbelievable. The final scorecards were 116 to 111 and 115 to 112, and people still thought that was too close, considering the masterclass that Perro put on in Puerto Rico. The kid flies from Australia, 7-1 underdog when the fight was made, 5-1 when the fight started, gets there a week in advance, fights a guy that nobody wants to fight. Matias 20-1 at the time with 20 knockouts, 100% finishing rate. People were afraid of him. He has hands of steel, and Perro goes in there and outboxes him. I don't know if you guys have this in America. It's called Shine Energy. It's basically nootropics, non-caffeinated. It's just a bunch of, who knows, probably a bunch of bullshit, but it's tasty. So, yeah, we have a new IBF champion at 140. The 140-pound landscape. You have Pitbull, Cruz, Devin Haney, Liam Perro, and Haney still has his belt, and Teofimo Lopez. So there's a lot of fights to be made at 140. Let's talk about 135. I'm going to play the knockout. You guys have probably seen it going viral by now. Spectacular. This was me during our live stream.
It was the left hand. Oh my God, that was insane. That was crazy.
So it's not, he sneaks in an uppercut.
In a fight that he was down on the cards.
Right.
Catches Frank in the corner.
No. It's an
Left
uppercut.
hand.
Right there. And then he's right.
Oh.
Poor Frank.
Frank fought so.
If you guys tuned in to the live stream yesterday and watched it with us, I say thank you. We had a good time. We live streamed. I did some live commentary for the. We started with the last 3 fights. We weren't able to watch the Matias fight live, but we got to see. It was a hell of a fight, mate. We saw. You know what? The end of the Ademas Gaucher fight. It was pedestrian. Carlos Ademas kept his WBC middleweight title. He didn't impress me at all. But Gary Antoine Russell got beat for the first time against Alberto Puello. Alberto Puello is tough, man. No one's talking about that guy. He's improved his record to 23-0. His cardio was impressive. His combinations were impressive. He's huge for the division. He's long, and he throws long combinations. I was impressed. Gary Antoine Russell boxed really well, too. That fight could have gone either way, so I'm not going to say it's a robbery. It was a close fight. I'd have to rewatch it. Then we got to see the Benavidez versus Bostic fight, and then we live streamed the Tank fight. But the Tank fight versus Frank Martin did what he did. He got out early. He won the first few rounds. Typical Gervonta Davis fashion. I think he threw 3 punches in the first round. He threw 8 punches in the second, and I think 13 in the third. And Frank was setting the pace, setting the tempo. He was showing everybody what he wanted to do. He was in impeccable shape. His cardio was through the roof. His jab was working. They were both using gorgeous feints, but you kind of got around round 4, round 5, you kind of got to see Frank was reacting to Tank's feints a little bit too much, and his footwork, which rounds 1, 2, and 3 was impeccable, circling right, circling left, would be out of the way of the counter, and when Tank would come into punch, he would grab. He fought really well, really smart in the beginning, and just as the fight went on, he just couldn't keep up the tempo. Gervonta Davis's pace is unmatched. His cardiovascular endurance is unmatched. He just pressures you. He's like a zombie. He just walks you down, and he got touched a bit. I mean, if you watched the fighter, looked at the post-fight press conference, his eyes were swollen. Frank was sharp, man. His punches, especially early, were coming clean. There was no fat on his punches. His feet were nice. His head was in the game. It was good while it lasted, but it's always easy to play Monday morning quarterback, and hindsight's 20/20 because we saw what happened. But when you look at the statistics and you see how Tank ended it, you kind of saw it coming. Frank, around round 5, he started standing a little bit too much in front of Tank. He stopped moving as much, and he said it was because of his cardio. He started, I bet you if you would ask Frank, he would have paced himself a bit more. I'm going to show you some of these stats. So I did a video on these stats that you can't see through the screen. I just want to read you the total punch output through rounds 1 through 8 to give you an idea of Gervonta's output and Frank's output early on. Round 1, Tank lands 3 punches in round 1. Frank lands 11. Round 2, Tank lands 4. Frank lands 9. So right now, Frank Martin is tripling up on Tank Davis. Round 3, Tank lands 10. Frank lands 10. I still gave that round to Frank Martin, round 3. I thought he did more. Round 4, they both land 11 punches, but Frank at this time is still out punching him, throwing more, but Gervonta is more efficient. We know that Tank doesn't waste a lot. He doesn't waste a lot of movement. He doesn't waste a lot of feints, and he doesn't waste a lot of punches. He missed a little bit early on, but when he was sitting down on his shots, he was throwing everything on it. And then rounds 5, Tank lands 11, Frank lands 13. Round 6, Tank lands 11, Frank lands 8. Round 7, Tank 19, Frank 10. Round 8, Tank 10, Frank 9. The difference with that is Frank was punching back. He wasn't shelling up too much. It's just that you can't beat Tank Davis on your back foot. It works for a little bit of amount of time, but unless you can sit down on your shots and make Gervonta back up, that's the thing. And I talked about this in the video I did in the library today, is the fact that whoever is out there, if there is a guy that could beat Tank, whether it's at 35 or 40, he's going to have to push Tank Davis back. You're going to have to make him back up and disallow him from sitting on everything, man. When he was sitting down on those shots and from round 5 onwards, it was a thing of beauty. It was an arsenal. And that's when you started kind of seeing the fight get away from Frank. When you started seeing the flurries, when Gervonta's trying to take his head off and just smirking at him. And it's just like, man, it is only a matter of time before these things start landing flush, before Frank's feet start failing him. And that's exactly what happened. We know that Benavidez beat Vosdick. It went the distance. It's it's not the fight a lot of people wanted to see, but it's the fight I expected, and I know it's the fight a lot of you guys expected. I didn't expect Dave to go out and finish Vosdick, but I expected him to win. He started off strong, and if I interviewed Benavidez, I'd like to ask him if he would make adjustments on his gas tank, because the first 3 rounds he was throwing those archetypal Benavidez combinations. His movement was through the roof, and then somewhere around rounds 5 and 6, he started mimicking Vosdick, and they started doing this sort of. It started to look like a sparring match, but all in all, he's the interim light heavyweight champ now. He puts himself in a position to fight the winner of Better Beef and Bivol, and it's like it's a game of business chess, because we've heard Canelo has talked about wanting to fight Bivol again at light heavy, right? He talked about that. We all know the years and years of Benavidez talking about he wants to fight Canelo. Now, what better sort of karma, call it irony, that would take place if Benavidez goes up to light heavyweight and gets the winner of Better Beef and Bivol? Let's say Bivol wins and Benavidez beats Bivol, and now he just sits there saying, hey, Canelo, what are you going to do now? Because after the fight, he said that he will go back to 68 after he wins the unified title at light heavyweight. That's his plans. He wants to go back and forth, wants to be undisputed in both divisions. He also said he had a right tendon injury in his hand. I don't think the kid's going to lie. He said he had a tendon injury, and that he'd only put on 15 pounds when whoever was in it, was it Nance? I get mixed up with the guy's name who interviewed him. I've been gone from America too long. But he asked him, they weighed in at 174, and he was like, how much did you put on? And Benavidez said he only put on 15 pounds. He was only weighing 189. That was kind of shocking. Vosdick did look like the bigger guy. Vosdick looked like he was in a weight class above. I don't know how much of that was his body composition, because Vosdick looked in tip-top shape, the best shape I've seen him since probably 2017 when he fought Stevenson. But like I said, the first few rounds were exciting. It was kind of like from round 5 onwards, myself and everyone tuning into the stream, we were just kind of like, let's just get to Gervonta. It was like they were sparring. Neither one of them were putting themselves in a risk to get hurt, and they were kind of like almost like a gentleman's agreement to go to the cards, and it was a wash. But we got a lot of fights to talk about in the future. Who to fight? You know what I'm saying? Like Tank Davis at 135. There's a lot of options for him. A lot of people, as soon as Tank wins that fight, he does the backflip. He goes into the crowd. Him and Errol Spence Jr., they bury the hatchet. We know they've been boys, but fight week, they were jawing back and forth at each other. We didn't know how much vitriol was actually behind that. It was good to see EJ and Tank hug it out directly after the victory. And then you see Ryan Garcia come to the ropes, gives Tank love. He wants that rematch. Shakur was on Twitter. He wants that rematch. But I want to ask you guys, of all the champions at 35, you got Baranchyk, you got Shakur, you got Tank, and you got Loma. Who do you want him to fight? Yeah, Loma. I want to see him fight Lomachenko. I know a lot of you guys, a lot of Tank's haters are going to say 5 years too late, but I'm going to say what I said in the video. I'd rather be a late than never, because if that fight doesn't happen now, when is it going to ever happen? Which one of these guys? These are the champions at 35. Tank, Baranchyk. I feel bad for Baranchyk. He doesn't get a pub. He's kind of left out. But him and Lomachenko, both Ukrainian, holding 2 of the 4 belts. What's that say about that Olympic team? 2012. Vosdick was on that Olympic team. Usyk was on that Olympic team. And Vosdick's the only one without a belt. So they're doing something right in the Ukraine. Let me correct myself. They're doing something right in Ukraine. I got yelled at for saying the Ukraine, so I don't mean to offend anybody. Let's see. We got fights coming up. The 140-pound champions. We talked about a Cruz, Lopez, Haney, Pero. I mean, who's going to unify there? What's the next fight to make? Rumor was that at 135, they were going to make William Zepeda the mandatory for Tank. Zepeda is 30-0 with 26 knockouts. Tank is now 30-0 with 28 knockouts. Zepeda's coming off a victory against Maxie Hughes. I mean, that's an interesting fight. I don't know if the Americans want to see it, but we'll see what happens. What are you going to do with Liam Pero? Do you come down to Australia? Eddie Hearn got on the microphone right away talking about make a Devin Haney versus Liam Pero fight to unify in Australia. It's like, we'll see what happens. What do you guys want to see? Tomorrow, I'm going to be releasing the David Benavidez and Vostok recap with the statistic breakdown. We're going to talk about the power punches, the jabs, and overall punch output. We're going to talk a little bit about what's next for David Benavidez. Guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, do it now. I appreciate the likes and the shares. And like always, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I got to get going. Bang.